Hello everyone, my name is Tariq Alhindi. I'm going to talk to you today about our paper What the Fact Check, Guiding Check-Worthy Information Detection in News Articles through Argumentative Discourse Structure. This is joint work with my colleagues Brennan and Smaranda. In fact-checking, we are interested in first finding statements to fact-check and deciding the veracity of those statements by comparing them with evidence from credible sources. However, most work on automating fact-checking starts with a precompiled list of claims to fact-check that was prepared manually. And there is previous work on detecting checkworthiness, but it is mostly on text from the political domain that comes from debates, and it uses hand-scratcher features and more recently transformers. However, previous work shows that the notion of checkworthiness greatly varies across genre. And what we want to do here, we want to look at a different genre from a different domain. So we want to look at what about checkworthiness in news articles from a different topic like climate change. And we want to look at if checkworthiness is related to other aspects other than the text itself, like argument structure. And our hypothesis in that regard is that fact checkers tend to fact check a premise when it supports a claim and fact check a claim when it is not supported or only supported by other claims, which is an example of evading the burden of proof fallacy. So this is an example of an article from our dataset where the segments in gray are fact-checked segments, and then we show the annotation of the argumentative components in the colors that shows the major claim, and premise, and also the relation between these components, support or attack relations. The outline of the remaining of the talk is as follows. I'll go over some related work, describe our data set, and describe the models and results, and end with the conclusion. So let's start with the related work. Previous work on checkworthiness have looked at checkworthiness, as I mentioned, in the political domain and debates such as claim buster and the claim rank systems. Also, the Cliff Check That Lab organized a shared task over the last 3 years that looked at checkworthiness from text, also mostly from debates or social media. However, studying the relation between checkworthiness and argumentation, there isn't much related work about that. There's some work that categorize the types of statements and categorize the types of evidence that they need, but nothing that really utilizes the argument structure in detecting checkworthiness. Let me describe now our data set. Our data set comes from, so we have 95 climate change news articles that have fact-checked text segments by climate scientists at climatefeedback.org. The articles come from 40 publishers, mainly in the US, UK, and Australia. And the fact checkers give the article an article level credibility rating from very low to very high. And also they do the sentence level fact checking annotations, right? Each article is tagged by 3 to 5 climate scientists where they evaluate scientific reasoning and add relevant missing information, and they check for factual accuracy and then precision, clarity, and scientific understanding. The fact-check segments vary in length from a fragment of a sentence to multiple sentences. So we map this to binary labels at the sentence level. So we have fact-check sentences or non-fact-check sentences. And a sentence is labeled as fact-checked if it is fact-checked or has a fact-check segment or it's part of a multi-sentence fact-check segment. The 95 articles are split to training, development, and test sets, as shown here. And the good thing about this data set, although it's small in size, however, the fact-checked class consists of 20 to 25% of each of those splits, which is much higher than other data sets for checkworthiness that have only 5% of the sentences that are labeled as checkworthy. So what we do is we annotate the argument structure on top of these fact-checked articles, and we use an annotation scheme that has argument components of major claim, claim and premise, and argument relations of support, attack, restate, and joint. We hire 6 annotators who are undergrads in linguistics, English, and comparative literature. Each is assigned 32 article batch, and each article is annotated by at least 3 annotators. The gold annotations are constructed by keeping the minimum common span of overlapping components from the 3 annotations. This is for the components, and for the relations, we only keep the relations that are between gold components only, and we prioritize them by adherence to the guidelines. So we only keep relations that are allowed in our annotation scheme, and we also prioritize them by the annotator quality as well. So we get an inter-annotator agreement using Krippendorf's alpha of 0.43, and this is using the coding version which compares each component to all other components. Let me move to the analysis and model part. So if we look at the fact-checked segments and look at the argumentation within these fact-checked segments, we see that the majority of them consist only of only a single argumentative component, and some of them consist of more, and also there are remaining ones that are not argumentative but are still fact-checked. So not all of the fact-checked segments are argumentative. But if we look at the majority of those that consist of only a single argumentative component, we see that if that component is a claim or a major claim, it is used to either supported by another claim or supporting a claim. And if it's a premise, it is used to support a premise. This is in line with our initial hypothesis that a premise is fact-checked when it is used to support a claim, and a claim is fact-checked when it is supported only by other claims or not supported. And the way we model this as a sentence classification task. So given a sentence, is it checkworthy or not? And we use macro-F1 for evaluation. And we also map this as a sentence ranking task. Given an article as a list of sentences, can we rank them from most checkworthy to least checkworthy? And we use mean average precision for this task. And the way we model this also, we take advantage of BERT's next sentence capability to add context to the target sentence. And that context can be the local discourse context, only by having the previous or the next sentence. And we use argumentation to select the context by pairing the target sentence with another sentence that has an argumentative relation with the target sentence. That is, if the target sentence is argumentative. If it's not argumentative, so then we revert back to the discourse context for that particular sentence. And we also experiment with prepending the type of that sentence in addition to providing the argumentative context. So we provide the type as a claim and the text of the target sentence and its argumentative context as well. All right, so when we look at the results in the development set, so the best results of the baseline is the one that uses the target sentence with the previous sentence, which has the highest mean average precision and macro-F1 score among the baselines. However, when we use the argumentation context of a single sentence, we see improvements in both macro F1 and the fact check F1 score, the fact check class F1 score. When we add the types, the results do not improve as much on the development set. And then when we look at the test set, but before the test set, we see that when we add additional argumentation context, the results do not improve as much. So for the test set, we only experiment with adding a single sentence from the argumentation context. So these are the results on the test set. And then we compare with the same baseline from before, which was the highest on the development set by adding the previous sentence. We see that adding the argumentation context by also prepending the type or not prepending the type, both improve in the baseline. And by prepending the type, we also get statistically significant results in macro F1 score and mean average precision over all baselines. This indicates that using an argumentation context is more beneficial for the check coordinates detection and also help deciding what sentences to fact check in a news article. All right, so in conclusion, we release a novel corpus with multi-layer annotations for both check coordinates and argument structure. We show that we model check coordinates in news articles both as a sentence classification and a sentence ranking task. And we show that using argument structure as context yields better result than using local discourse context for the task of check coordinates detection. In future work, we want to attempt to predict the argument components and relations rather than using the gold annotations as we've done in this study, and also investigate other reasons for check coordinates that are not necessarily related to the argument structure, that include other argument fallacies, for example, cherry picking or the Strawman argument fallacy, and we want to see will those inform the check coordinates detection task or not. Thank you, and happy to answer any questions you might have during the conference.